Hi, welcome to another episode of Teen Pride Book Talks. My name is Lucy, and this is the show on AADL TV, where each episode I take a few minutes to talk about a young adult book that is both representative of and inclusive of folks in the LGBTQIA plus community. The book that I would like to talk about today is called As You Walk On By, and this is by Julian Winters. As You Walk On By is the story of 17-year-old Theo. He is a senior in high school, and he just wants to get good grades and go to the school of his choice and kind of get through the year. He works hard. He gets along with his father, who he lives with, and he has this group of two other friends. The three of them, Theo, his friend Darren, and his friend Jay, form a trio. They call themselves Team TNT, the nameless trio. And one of the things that Team TNT does is they dare each other to do things all the time. And they have a lot of rules around their dares, and you have to accept the dare as it's given to you. And so this book starts out, it's right around prom time, and it starts out with one promposal gone wrong when Theo's in the wrong place. He believes a guy named Luca is promposing to him. He doesn't want to go with Luca, and it's all awkward. He is dared by Team TNT to ask his crush, Christian, to the prom. So they go to a party, and this is where Theo is going to do this. And he gets brave, and he's been dared to do it, so he has to. And he asks Christian to the prom. It goes horribly wrong. Christian has a boyfriend, and this is sort of known by a lot of people. Theo's wondering if his friends knew and why they didn't tell him. And he's horribly embarrassed. But he's at this party and he's designated driver, so he can't leave. So he goes upstairs to hide out in the room of the sister, the person who's throwing the party. He just wants to be in there by himself and sort of stew in his embarrassment and not be seen by anybody at the party. So eventually, one by one, some people start to enter this room, a lot for the same reason. They don't want to be at the party, or something happened to them, some awkward exchange, or they're not feeling good about something outside the party, something that night. And so he's joined by Luca, first of all, who is the person who he had that awkward exchange with at school when that promposal went wrong. And then he's joined by Aaliyah, who, funnily enough, used to be Theo's great friend. Aaliyah's uncle and Theo's father were dating for a long time. And so Aaliyah and Theo spent a lot of time together, and then they broke up, and that created such an awkwardness between Aaliyah and Theo, so they really don't talk anymore. And now they're in this room together with Luca. Aaliyah doesn't think highly of Theo at all. Theo doesn't always exercise the best decision-making skills around his behavior, and so there are some things that she's still angry at Theo about. A girl named Michaela joins them, and last but not least, a non-binary person named River, who brings snacks and is very endearing, but also very awkward. And so the five of them are in this room, and we get to know all five of the characters very well. Julian Winters does a great job of really developing these characters. So we learn a lot about them, but everything that we're given is through Theo's point of view. So this book is just one person's point of view. It's all Theo. So we are learning about these people in relation to Theo. And they start to open up to each other. Not always in the best way. It's not the most smooth conversation. It's not without some conflict, but they're stuck in this room and they start to realize that they didn't know each other before very well, except for Aaliyah and Theo, but there are things that they still didn't know about each other and things that explain why people behave the way that they do. And they see that they have some things in common. This book has been compared to the movie The Breakfast Club, and I can really see it in this moment. This sort of awkward band of people comes together and really forms something strong and cohesive. And this group of five really spends the rest of the book together. They even leave the party together, and they become this strong unit supporting one another. Because he's been having these thought-provoking conversations with these people, Theo starts to think about his current friends, his Team TNT, the people who are tried and true, who have always been his friends. In fact, for so long that he doesn't even really question it. But being around a group of supportive people makes Theo start to think about the behavior of his friends. For instance, why would they tell him to ask someone to the prom when they knew that that person had a boyfriend? And then he thinks back on exchanges where someone else has made homophobic comments around Darren and Jay. Darren and Jay don't say anything to defend their friend. They might even laugh, and sometimes they're part of those exchanges. Theo's always kind of gone along with it because he tells himself that they are his friends, they've accepted him, and therefore they are good allies. This book delves pretty deeply into the idea of allyship and what being a good ally really means. I like that Julian Winters has put this part in this story. I don't think that that's come up a lot in many of the young adult books that I've read. Those relationships as friends being allies, and are friends always allies? This is a really good question to ask. It also shows that there's these messy relationships that people have, not just in romantic relationships, but in friendships. Friendships can be messy too. And Theo has to question why he's allowed himself to be exposed to this kind of toxicity within his friendships, all the while realizing that he has sometimes made some awful decisions around his own behavior based on being friends with Darren and Jay. There's a lot of reflection going on and reevaluating these friendships. There is a little bit of romance in this book, which is really nice. It doesn't go too deeply into it. It's not a central part of the book, despite a lot of the book beginning around these promposals. And there's a lot of joy in this book. There is humor in the interactions of these 5 people. There is the experiences they have in realizing that they have this connection, and then what they do with it, and how they go out into the world. And this night evolves into spending time in this room to spending time in the Waffle House. And they just become more and more of this supportive band of people. There are some serious issues in the book, but it's also an uplifting book, and it's warm-hearted and it's funny. I read an interview with the author where he was saying as a kid, he was given so many books where the queer characters or the Black characters' storyline was always about trauma and pain and discrimination, and that the experience of those people was being used as a lesson for readers who weren't those people, readers who didn't look like those people or identify like those people. And so he was writing directly against the idea that BIPOC and queer characters are created as a lesson for somebody else. So he really puts this joy in this book. He puts storylines outside of that. He creates complex friendships, and he creates sweet romance. And he has this father-son relationship where both of them are queer. They are very close. They get along. Because this book takes place in such a short period of time, and you really are focused on these 5 characters for the most part, and they are so well written, you get to know them very well. And so for me, in reading this story, all these characters stuck with me, and the way in which they interacted. I think As You Walk On By was a great book, and I hope that you read it so that you can get to know Theo and the really great people that he becomes friends with in this one night, in this one room. Thanks for joining me.